about it, and we need to kind
Yeah.
of understand it. In a way, there is
Mm.
no way to show resilience unless you've experienced difficulties. Because
Mm.
resilience, by definition, means that you are experiencing difficulties.
Mhm.
The truth is that no one gets to be spared difficulties in life. It's just it just doesn't make sense that
No.
anyone, it's part of our human condition that we struggle to some extent,
Mhm.
some more than others. But so therefore the idea of resilience, it becomes uh,
Mhm.
a really important concept. Uh,
Yes.
and so right now, yes, we have to kind of think about resilience because it's important, but it's also you were right in your opening statement. It's the
Mm.
idea that it's sometimes it's overstated, the importance of resilience rather than protecting people's mental health. So
That's right.
I appreciate that thing. So it's not an easy topic in a way, but nothing important
Yes.
really. So,
Yes.
so I think this is a reasonable to expect us to struggle a little bit with a concept like this, which is very complicated. You know? Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I know that your research is, premised on psychological resilience. Why tackle this topic? Because I know in our communities, being strong, being resilient is thrown around a lot, right? And so, what kind of, encouraged you to begin this research?
Well, I was thinking about um, I was thinking about what makes us strong, what makes us push back against,
Yes,
the tides. I've seen, I've experienced a lot of times where
yes,
people have been, who have been actually people you wouldn't expect to do well in the world, but they have.
yes,
Um, for my dissertation, I spent many hours interviewing
yes,
indigenous Canadians
yes.
who were professionals, and I asked
Mm,
them questions about how do they account for their own resilience. What are their stories of their
yes,
lives? And
yes.
we were able to recount both the difficulties, but
Mm,
also the abilities that they had to rise above. Not
mm-hmm.
unscathed, because many of them also experience a lot of difficulties in the struggle, but
Yes,
in
yes.
some ways they were able to tell their stories, and it was really
Mm,
important to hear how they understand it rather than me telling them what makes people resilient. They
yes.
told me how they understood their own resilience as individuals. And so
Mm,
for me, it was wonderful. It was kind of eye opening to hear
mhm,
how people sort of define it for themselves and through their own experience.
mm.
Yeah.
Wow. I love that. And, now I'm just curious. So I'm going to ask, so what were some of the commonalities that you found in your research when it came to talking about resilience?
Well, I think there were some commonalities. There were, like, for example, um, people found it really important to talk about identity and working
Mm,
out their identity.
mm,
And in this kind of complex um, way, they approach the idea of their own identity, and they talk
mhm.
about their struggles through their own
Yeah.
identity. And in some ways, the actual work on understanding their own identity was
Mm,
actually part of the process of healing and coming to
yes.
of a place of really appreciating themselves and the culture
Mm,
in which they belong and the heritage that they carry.
mm,
So that whole idea of understanding and working through, or I would say almost like forging an identity, was a very important part of their growth and of their success
mm.
in many ways. Sometimes
Wow.
something surprised me
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that surprised me was almost all of them talked about many different things in the work,
Mm-hmm.
because it was really important. Most of the timeouts that many people took was like over a year. Like they stopped studying, they stopped doing a
Mm-hmm.
whole bunch of other things, and
Yes.
some took time out to have a child. Some took time.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of played with words a little bit, because
Yes.
I like the word retreat,
Mm.
because many of them, with this way they described it, was like a retreat. And we could
Wow.
think of retreat as two different ways. Retreat, like in
Yes.
a military way, I'm burning out, I'm gonna lose, I keep losing, I just have to stop, right?
Yes.
So you retreat, you
Yes.
pull back. But there's
Mm.
another meaning to the word retreat, which is going on a retreat.
Yes.
So so in a way, even though you're pulling
Mm.
back, it's a time to reflect, a time
Mm.
to notice, a time to
Mm-hmm.
pay attention. Who am I? Why am I doing
Yes.
this? Who am I
Yes.
support? You know, what's
Yes.
motivating me? So
Yes.
even though sometimes it looked like as though stopping their studies and all this seemed like a
Mm.
disaster, it
Yes.
wasn't. It was the
Mm.
opposite.
Wow.
One of my supervisors says it's almost like a gestation period. It's a period of
Yes.
birth, or birthing something by taking this time
Yes.
to settle. Or you could think of it in the same way, like a caterpillar cocoons, and then you
Mm.
from it. But you need that time, and so sometimes taking time off is actually really very productive, even though
Absolutely.
you're not doing anything. Sometimes
Mm.
just being is
Hmm.
actually really important in terms of psychological strength.
Oh, that's
So those are
amazing.
some of the things that were very important. Yeah.
Oh, that is so wonderful. And I love how both of those they go so nicely together, right? Because on
Mhm.
one hand you're talking about just identity and really learning who you are and what makes you resilient. And then on the other hand you're talking about retreat and really taking that time to reflect. And I feel like which one comes first, the chicken or the egg, right? But yeah, they're just a symbiosis, right?
That's right. They can go together, because sometimes while you're in that retreat, you're trying to figure these things out. That's about
Yes.
being on a retreat. Sometimes you do that with spiritual leaders. Sometimes help you through that period of sort
Yes.
of reflection, of coming to
Mhm.
understand. So
Yes.
so sometimes they sort of go together. You know
Yes.
um, and people emerge from this often wiser, rested, and more ready.
Mhm. Yes. Oh, that's amazing. And I know, Dr. Sharoy, you've been in this field for a very long time. 20 plus years, right?
uh, I, I,
And
yeah, I started with working in community mental health um,
wow,
in 1990. Yeah,
wow.
so it does go back. Yeah.
Wow,
Mhm.
I was 3 years old, Dr.
I know.
Sharoy. Just to say, no, don't do the math, love babe. Do not do the math. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Right?
I'm
And
okay. I'm okay with the math. I'm with the math. I like being an elder.
oh my goodness, we need it though, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
honestly, we need the trailblazers like you, to help us because honestly, I feel like especially now, especially when it comes to mental health services now, obviously it's becoming a little bit more less taboo, but you guys have been blazing these trails for many years, right? And I think that that's so needed and it continues to be needed, so I tip my hat
That's right.
off to you and all the other psychologists that are the OGs, right?
Definitely.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I love that you talked about this idea of identity, because especially as people are experiencing, depression, anxiety, other disorders, even just the day-to-day stressors, I do find that identity is something that comes up a lot
Yeah.
in the therapy room, right?
Yes.
And I find that a lot of people question themselves in different seasons with regards to, like, who am I don't
Yeah.
really know who I am,
Yeah. I understand. I think it's it's something sometimes. I think it's almost forged, and forged in fire, if
Yeah.
you wish. Like I feel in some ways there is some pain associated sometimes in sorting out and coming to a place of identity, and
Mm,
it's, in a way, when it when the metal cools, you want it to um,
mm, yes,
solidify in a way that works for you, that has
yes.
really true meaning for
Mm,
someone.
yeah,
Like, identity is complicated.
it
Um,
is.
Part of it is about who do I belong to? So
Mm,
where did I come from? You know,
yeah,
but it's also who acknowledges me, because
yes.
in a way you could identify however you like, but if the people in the group don't say you belong here, then
Mm,
that's a real threat to one's identity.
yeah,
So I do think identity is complex. I
yeah,
think it's very difficult for us to move on, except through, I think it's a very human experience to embrace
yes,
the idea of identity. And some
absolutely.
people, in some situations, they never have to
Mm,
think about it. They never have to ever.
yeah,
But for most of us, that's not we don't have that luxury. Some of us, we
yes,
kind of struggle with it a bit.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Um,
I-
yeah, some identities are complex, like
Mm,
understanding Black identity, for example.
mm,
You can do, like, I think, like, years of study in terms of understanding what does that mean, and how
yeah,
people identify with it. It
yes,
you know it is pretty complex, and yet
absolutely,
still something that's important to many people.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely. It's foundational, yet it's complex at the same time.
I think so. I
Mhm.
think so. And the
Mm,
fact that it's still a viable identity,
mm,
it suggests that some of the factors that created it are still around. So
mhm,
it's still catched on. It still has some
mhm.
utility. So yeah.
Yes,
So here it is. Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely. So I'm gonna ask the question, who gets to be resilient, Dr. Sharoy? Who gets to be resilient? Who?
Yeah, yeah, I think that's a good question. This is a good question. Well,
Yeah.
most of us, because as I said, most of us will have struggles in life.
Mhm,
Like, we're not meant. Okay, this is probably controversial, but we're not meant to be happy, at least not for very long. Humans
mm,
will have a capacity to contain happiness.
mm,
Maybe for a while, but ooh, we can't. Even if I ask people to imagine heaven, it's
mm,
limited how much they could imagine, because it's hard to put your brain on that idea of being
mhm.
happy all the time, like all the time, you know. Um,
Yeah.
Plus, we go back to our baseline
Mhm.
eventually. You know,
Yes.
if you won, like, let's say, $1 million tomorrow, you will be happy. I'm pretty sure.
Just tell me where. I'm coming. Where?
a week after, you're probably still happy. A
Yeah.
month, 2 months, you start going back closer to your baseline. Within a year, you'll be at your
Mm,
you will be at your baseline.
mhm.
In terms of
Yes.
happiness. Happiness is not something we could
Yes.
sustain,
Yes.
and that's why sometimes trying to the pursuit of happiness is absurd. Like it's a dog
Mm,
chasing its tail, and
mm,
happiness is pointless. And
mm,
although that sounds controversial, in reality, there's a part of us that knows that. We make ourselves
mm,
miserable
mhm,
because we keep trying to find happiness all the time. And
mhm.
searching happiness out, it's I don't know, my word for it is neurotic. It,
Neurotic. Whoa.
it's crazy making, right?
Yeah.
Trying to
Mhm.
chase happiness. Happiness comes and goes. We don't have the
Yeah.
ability to sustain it. You know,
Mm,
um, humans, we come equipped with hands and feet,
yes.
suggesting that we tend to move, that we need to create things, we need to make things. We need to
Mhm.
struggle to some extent. We need to work. I
Mm,
think this is the human design. We have a
yeah.
brain that's very busy, always coming up with
Mm,
ideas. Some of us
yes.
more than others, but
Yes.
this is our design. This is we made to struggle to some extent, and
Mhm.
we can't sustain happiness for very long. So
Mhm.
in many ways, all of us have difficulties in life.
Mm,
I remember I had gone to a funeral for somebody we used to work for, and she was like
mhm.
94, I think, and she had a
Wow.
pretty good life. When she retired, she did well and financially,
Mm,
but she also had a lot of neighbors who were friends with her and lots of. And what was amazing was at the funeral, people were in tears,
mm,
and I was thinking, this is a good life. You lived until you're 94.
mm,
And, you know, so even the best life comes to an end. There was still some sadness.
yes. Yes.
You know, this is part of our this is part of the human condition.
Mm,
I think accepting this is a really important part of being resilient.
mhm.
You know, is accepting that there are difficulties,
Mm,
and even with the best life, there's still difficulties.
mhm.
And so our ability to overcome,
Yes.
you know,
Mm,
becomes really important.
yes.
In the process of overcoming, sometimes we learn things.
Mm,
Sometimes we become a vessel for good
mm,
news, a vessel for wisdom,
mm,
inspiration for other people. So I think that struggle also comes with some real benefits as well.
mhm,
Again, that's not to suggest that because this is how life is, we all we should um, we should be okay with the world being unjust. And I think no, that's not what it is.
mhm,
But what it is about accepting that there's always going to be more to be done,
mhm,
which to me, like, if I think you gotta I think
mhm,
anyway, a good distinction between our values um and our goals, I think, makes a big difference to me,
mhm.
because the values are the things that push us,
Yes.
that make us want to strive
Yeah.
towards. A goal could be something that you finish at some point,
Mhm,
but in many ways, it's the values that we need to really focus on in terms of how we move through life.
yes.
Like, for example, um, building a hospital can be a goal.
Mhm,
Improving the health of Canadians or the mental health of Canadians, that's a value system. Okay,
yes.
that'll always be going on, you know,
Yes.
and to devote your life to that kind of a struggle, to me, that's a good
Mm-hmm.
life,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And whether
Yes.
it brings happiness or not, it sometimes probably does, sometimes it doesn't. But this is what makes life worth living.
Yes, yes. I'm really happy that you talked about, the baseline and you talked about happiness because I think that, a lot of times we feel like if we're not happy all the time, then, something must be wrong with us, right? And you're right, like there are like ups and downs in life, right? And, you know, that is again a part of the, like, I love that you said it's a part of the human condition, right?
Yeah,
I think one of my favorite cartoon scenes is Winnie the Pooh. I love Winnie. I love a good Winnie the Pooh. And when he sits down with Eeyore, he's not necessarily trying to cheer him up, but he's willing to just sit with him in the midst of the discomfort. And I feel like sometimes we get uncomfortable with the discomfort that someone's not feeling happy. And I think that if we, like, you're right, if we can accept that sometimes sadness is also a part of the human condition, not that
yeah,
we want to stay there as our baseline, but to know that it does happen. I
yeah,
think that, yeah, we can
yeah,
be a
yeah.
lot more supportive to our friends and our loved ones, for sure.
Precisely. Like
Hmm.
the acceptance is the key. Uh,
Hmm.
sorry, there's a
The
thunderstorm.
tornado watch, yeah.
Yeah, but acceptance is the key here. You know, it is about
Yes.
accepting things that you cannot fix, and there are a lot of things
Hmm.
that we can't fix. You know, including that one day everybody that we love, including ourselves, is one day going to die. We
Yes.
can't fix that. You
Yeah.
know, the fact that
Hmm.
we have these busy brains and the way our brains work,
Hmm.
yeah, we can't fix that. This is
Yes.
part of our human condition. This is how it is.
Hmm.
There's another way of thinking about acceptance sometimes, because when I talk to people about acceptance, they may say to me, "How can I accept this? This is unacceptable."
Yes.
And I think it's a good question. And my answer is that there is there are ways you could think about acceptance that is a little
Mm.
more active. For example, like these are all I use it as a quick a quick memory trick.
Hmm.
So for acceptance, there are at least four words beginning with A that helps us to frame acceptance. One,
Hmm.
one is making like adjustments.
Hmm.
The other one is making adaptations. Another word is accommodate, and the other one is last one is probably allow. So
Mm.
sometimes you think, okay, how can I adjust to the situation, or
Yes.
how could I adapt to it?
Hmm.
How what can I do to accommodate this that I can't change? And am I should I actually allow some of this?
Yes. It's
Once you start
powerful.
thinking, asking these questions, it sort of gets your brain because it's almost the right question to ask, you know,
Yes.
because the new ideas start coming up, you know, like
Hmm.
adjustment means like making small changes that might
Yes.
help you deal with things. Like, for
Yes.
instance, I have pretty bad ADHD from time to time, and despite the therapy medication, I could still
Hmm.
have some absent-mindedness. That's
Yes.
very common for me. So in some ways, I have to make some
Yes.
adjustments and have some adaptations to how my
Yes.
work.
Yes.
So for example, you know, I have air tags on all my keys, my bag, you
Yes.
know, my phone is linked to my device so I can find it wherever it is. I happen to leave it around the
Yes.
house. So in
Yes.
some ways, I could. I could be upset or feel resentful that I have
Mm,
this, or blame my parents for giving it to me, or whatever.
mm,
But that just
mhm.
gets stuck,
Yes.
you know.
Yes.
So to
Yes.
me, the opposite of acceptance in this context is resentment, and resentment is a
Mm,
hallmark of getting stuck, because
yes.
keep
Absolutely.
laying over all how bad things are for you versus
Yes.
figuring out, okay, how can I adjust to this? How can I adapt to it?
Hmm.
How
I
can I
love that.
accommodate this?
Hmm.
Like I've like when I think about, like, right now we're living in Canada. The people the indigenous people here, there's
Yes.
no way they could survive without adjusting and adapting to the climate. It can be very
Yes.
harsh and
Yes.
changeable. You know,
Yes.
living on the
Hmm.
prairies during the winter, probably not a good idea. So they
Nope.
had to move in to the forested area to get protection. They had to
Mm.
adapt. They had to adjust to the situation. They
Yes.
they could spend all the time cursing
Hmm.
the weather, but it wouldn't change.
Yes.
It doesn't. So you have to adapt. You have to adjust to things that you
Yes.
cannot change.
Yes.
The accommodate, some of it is obvious, like you may have accommodation for things at work, or
Hmm.
sometimes you, you can think of it internally too, for some things
Yes.
that you cannot fix. So, for
Hmm.
example, the research suggests that people who, for example, have had lost a child, or a child
Hmm.
lost a child that died, there's very
Yes.
little evidence that most people who have gone through this recover fully.
Mm.
You know,
Mm.
so let's say if they lost a parent, most people
Hmm.
recover fully from such loss. They'll still,
Yes.
but there's no evidence that really, or very little
Hmm.
evidence that this can happen also if you lose a child. So,
Hmm.
so then it's not about recovery in that sense, in terms of getting over it. It's really about
Hmm.
a place. And I think
Hmm.
accommodating the pain is an important way of approaching such losses.
Yes.
So accommodate in this sense is like, if you wouldn't travel somewhere that you haven't been before, you need accommodations. Meaning
Yes.
that you want a place to stay. This is the
Hmm.
same idea. You internally you understand that there's a place in your heart that's never gone
Yes.
fully, and that then what you do
Hmm.
is that you accept this, and that pain is going to come from time to time, and
Yes.
days are going to be with me, but you
Hmm.
accommodate it, so it's not, it takes a certain room in your life, but it
Hmm.
doesn't take over the whole house.
Wow.
So that's the idea. So sometimes
Hmm.
when it comes to things that you cannot fix like this, there's no therapist can ever help someone fully
Hmm.
recover. And so we
Yeah.
know this. So then the work is to help them be able to accommodate this pain that
Hmm.
the rest of their lives. And I feel
Yes.
that's another way of thinking about accommodate.
Yes.
So again, these are ways to talk about and to deal with things that you cannot fix.
Hmm.
Even with the best therapy, you can't necessarily change.
Absolutely. Wow. You are listening to the Mental Health Hour on Love Bay Afrobeat Music and Talk Radio. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe. And don't forget to download the Love Bay Radio app on the Apple App Store and Google Play. Visit lovebayradio.live to support the station. Your donations help us continue bringing meaningful conversations like this to our community. You can reach Love Bay Radio at 437-778-3776 3299, serving you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The chat is open, Love Bay, and we'd love to hear from you. Tonight's question is: have you ever been praised for being strong when what you really needed was support? Stay with us, and we'll be right back. Boy, Dr. Sharoy, you're just dropping all the dumpling and all the gems tonight, huh? Whoa. My goodness. Come on. I mean, I was writing it down. So adjust,
Yes,
adapt,
adapt,
patience,
yes,
adapt,
accommodate,
accommodate, and
allow.
allow.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
And I think that this is so powerful because at its root and foundation, I was pondering as you were talking, like this is what we help clients to do in therapy,
yeah,
right? It's these
yeah.
four things. I said, well, may I go borrow this one? Okay, may I borrow? I'm
If
borrowing it.
you want, if you want, yeah, yeah, it's really yours.
Yes.
It's like with the allow, sometimes it's surprising once you, because sometimes, for example, let's say there are some emotions that we feel bad about.
Mm, yes.
For example, like jealousy. When often if we have a sense of jealousy, we feel bad about it, and often we deny it. I'm not
Yes.
jealous. So, and
Yes.
frankly, when we do that, it's annoying for other people because they're not stupid and they know that so the denial, the defensiveness makes it worse. It makes it because it's
Yes.
annoying, right? Versus
Mm-hmm.
accepting that, yeah, you can sometimes have, we're not perfect, and we could have emotions that we're not
Yes.
necessarily proud of, but sometimes repressing it makes it worse, denying it even worse, and sometimes it's just
Mm,
allowing it to come and go.
yes.
So like, for example, if we if someone had done something to offend us or hurt us,
Mm-hmm.
and we feel resentment from time to time, I think it's okay to allow it to come, but also allow it to go. So the idea is
Yes.
that you don't need to hold on to it. You don't need to grab it. You can
Mm-hmm.
acknowledge it, notice
Mm-hmm.
it, you
Yeah.
know, and let it come, let it go. Sometimes you
Yes.
even have fantasies about something bad happening to them, or
Mm-hmm.
you imagined something bad. Let the imagination come, let it go. If you
Yeah.
try to repress that what you imagined, it makes it
Mm-hmm.
because if you try to
Yes.
what anything you repress, you're actually making it stronger because you have to engage it to push it
Yes.
off your head. So it doesn't
Absolutely.
work. But
Mhm.
by allowing it, you're like, oh yeah, my brain does that sometimes. Okay, yeah, I'm not perfect, but I'm working on it, and
Yes.
you move on.
Yes.
You create that kind of flow through, and it doesn't get
Mm-hmm.
log jammed, uh,
Yes.
basically, because now you have two problems. You have this jealousy you're feeling, and then you have this guilt. So now you're having two problems instead of the one.
One double whammy.
That's right. That's right. So you're human and you're imperfect. You're gonna have weird stuff going through your mind. It's
Yeah.
it's that's how our brains work. So yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. So that's the allow part. It's you
Yes.
just have to allow it. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I hope you guys are writing this down, okay? So adjust, adapt, accommodate, and allow, right?
Yeah.
So, Dr. Sharoy,
Hmm.
where does control, because you know that as humans we love to control a thing, especially us Caribbean and African peoples and all of our brothers and sisters across the world, we love to control things. it,
Yeah.
where does the adjust, adapt, accommodate, allow play into this need that we have to control our
Yeah.
situations?
I think
Mm-hmm.
it's very complex. I think it's very complex because especially I think for especially for woman folk in our culture, there is a
Yes.
lot of expectation that you're gonna be responsible for everybody and
Mm.
sometimes for everything, and
Yes.
that sense of that responsibility makes you want to have more control because often you have a lot of anxiety about
Mm.
things not getting done or things not
Mm-hmm.
done properly, and the chaos that might follow from
Yes.
that. And so, in some ways, I feel like we need to acknowledge that that we live in a very like in our cultures, many of our cultures, they may not be matriarchal, but they're certainly matrifocal.
Mm-hmm.
Focus is on mothers, grandmothers, aunties.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the energy um,
Mm-hmm.
is coming from in terms of the
Mm-hmm.
family. So that's a lot of burden.
Mm.
That's a lot of burden, and this starts pretty early because young girls know that their role in the family, especially if
Yeah.
there's one, um,
Mm-hmm.
one girl in the family, there's a lot of pressure,
Yes.
to be the next matriarch. So
Mm-hmm.
that's a lot, and
Yes.
it's pretty complex, and it's also starts very early.
Mm.
So getting to a place of finding some peace with this becomes a tricky, very, very tricky thing to manage.
Mm. Yes.
And in some ways, it's probably better if a woman have some ideas about but you're asking me, so I'm going to tell you what I think.
Yeah.
I think that it's I think to some extent
Mm.
we, this is a big part of our culture,
Mm.
and some of it is not going to go away soon. I think there's a
Mm.
lot of things that men could do to help alleviate this. I think there's a lot
Mm-hmm.
that we could do, but
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I don't know if what men are incentivized to make some of these changes.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes what I say, is that often you need to delegate, but not just delegate tasks, but you need to delegate responsibilities,
Mm-hmm.
and which means you have to give up some control to do that,
Yes.
which is not easy.
Mm-mm.
Many people, I've seen it, and even in therapy, they
Uh-huh.
okay, I'm gonna do it, but then they want to take it over. Everything inside of them wants to, you know, um,
Yes.
yeah, yeah. And so I tried my best to reinforce all the all the efforts to walk away, let it be,
Yes.
and hand it off some of the responsibilities to someone else.
Dr. Shirai, I think you're right because one of the things I see a lot is, someone's like, okay, I'm going to ask so and so, or I'll say the kids, I'm going to ask my kids to take out the garbage or to sweep the floor. And then they sweep the floor, but then it's not done to their standard. And so they sweep it anyway. And so my question is always, what message do you think you're reinforcing
Yeah,
to
yeah,
the kid who just swept the floor and sees you sweeping it again?
yeah. They'll think it's pointless. Why bother when you're gonna fix it? Uh, it- you know, but it's
Yes.
very hard. It becomes like like I think sometimes the it's based on sometimes, like, if I drop the ball, this whole thing will
Mm.
be a disaster. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it probably is true at certain points, but it's
Mm-hmm.
probably not always true. And so it's about looking for some of these exceptions,
Yes.
recognizing it's not always the case,
Mm-hmm.
and it may not be the best, but it may not be a complete disaster either.
Yes.
So how do you get away from thinking about it in a more sort of a global way, and you start thinking about it in a more, well, I would say more reasonable way. You know,
Yes.
the global way is like, like, so if the floor is not swept, then the whole house is is dirty. So
Mhm.
it becomes sort of a global, or if something is not put away, then the whole house is a mess. But it probably isn't,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So, but that kind of catastrophizing is coming from a certain place, and it's often come
Mm.
from a place where there could actually be real, like really true catastrophes can occur. You know,
Mhm.
so I acknowledge that and I respect that, as well as say at the times when you need to let go of it. But
Yes.
anything that's based on some kind of a trauma, yeah, it's going to be harder to let go.
Absolutely. And
Yeah,
I think that's where the survival instinct comes in, right?
yeah, I would agree. I would agree. But it's
Mhm.
not all survival. Because
Yes.
so if somebody not sweeping the floor properly, is not going to result in death.
Well, I don't know. I mean, sometimes those Legos can be really sharp, Dr.
What?
Shiva.
Point taken. Point taken.
Have you ever stepped on Lego? I mean,
Yes,
you have
yes,
you have
yes,
children
yes.
and grandchildren. You must have stepped on some Lego in your day, huh?
I I agree. I agree. but finding humor in it is actually better than holding on to resentment. So
That's exactly.
yeah,
That's.
no, so I'm glad.
Oh my
Yeah,
goodness.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, I like again. I want to be also sensitive to why
Yes.
people
Yes.
get into this, and I totally understand the need for
Yes.
control, but it can get problematic,
Yes.
and sometimes, yeah, it gets to a lot of catastrophizing thinking, you know,
Yes.
one wrong move and this whole place is, gonna fall apart. Sometimes it's not
Hmm.
true, you
Yes.
know, sometimes not quite true,
Mm-hmm.
and so it's about trying to bring in a little more flexibility,
Mm.
lighten up a little bit, and realize, okay,
Yes.
nothing bad will happen.
Yes.
So anyway, those are my
Absolutely.
thoughts.
Oh, I love that. And so what about the listeners that are like, okay, I think I catastrophize. Maybe there's these intrusive thoughts that makes them feel like, uh, if the floor isn't swept properly, um, yeah, things are just not going to pan out right, and then they continue to ruminate on these things and they don't know how to stop it. What do you think are some things that they can try to kind of slow things down and to really dig into that resilience that we were talking about today?
Yeah, that is very common. You're right. It is very common. Like,
Hmm.
and what we call intrusive thoughts. Yes, you're right. All that is also true.
Hmm.
The partly is to recognize, I think, the impact of our thoughts and our emotions.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
because I think that's where it gets to be very, very tricky.
Yes.
Before we say that, we have to understand that the relationship between our thoughts and emotions is mostly a very good thing. It
Hmm.
actually helps us solve problems, right? So, for example, let's say you're leaning on a table right now, and every time
Yes.
you lean on the table, it rocks, and you're like, okay, I have to fix this table. Well,
Yes.
what happens is that your brain is going to go through a whole series of possibilities. Maybe
Mm.
I could uh, put all new legs on it, all four new legs. Maybe I
Yes.
could shave off one leg that's too long, or maybe
Yes.
I could add something to the other three to bring them up. So your brain
Yes.
will go through all these different ideas, and then one idea that seems to make sense, you'll get an emotional impact, like aha, or
Mm.
oh, I
Yes.
see, I get it. Or you might
Yes.
feel another kind of emotion if it's a big one, like a eureka.
Yes.
So the emotional impact from your thoughts is helpful because otherwise we won't know what thoughts to focus on.
Mm-hmm.
The thought that seemed to work will give you that feeling, and that emotion will make you, it would cement that thought in your brain. It'll make it very strong,
Mm,
right?
yes.
So
Mhm.
that's how our brains work, and it's always going to be that way. We're not like
Mhm.
Alexa, where you tell them, Alexa, tell me the distance between St. Catharines and Toronto, and we'll pop
Yeah.
out, shoot the answer out. That's not how our brains work. Our brains work by
Mhm.
constantly giving us thoughts, non
Yes.
even while we speak,
Mhm.
to some extent, we generating thoughts.
Mhm.
So in some ways, we have to accept it. This is the machinery that we are given,
Yes.
and the connection between the emotions and the thoughts are actually mostly good.
Mhm.
Not always,
Yeah.
but mostly good.
Yes.
So that's the foundation.
Yes.
And after that, people need to understand that sometimes that system doesn't go well,
Mm.
and that we may have a thought that got stuck in our heads that are affecting our emotions,
Yes.
but at the same time, it doesn't really help us.
Mhm.
You know, so for example, when I used to play a lot of badminton, I'm never very good, but sometimes I have a surprisingly, I might be up 5 points
Ooh, yes.
and only 2 more points to the end of the game, and I'll have this intrusive thought. Yeah, but now you're gonna
Uh,
choke. Or you've been doing well, but you always choke, right? And that's an intrusive
yes.
thought that's actually fairly common for many people.
Mm.
And it's gonna throw you off your game
Yes.
because now you're thinking about that thought. So in the past, before I know better, I used to try to push a thought out. Like, no, I don't want to think that. But then you're engaging the thought even more
Yes.
by trying to push it out.
Mhm.
But and then I'll get mad with the thought. But then that's a strong emotion that getting mad, and then that makes the thought even stronger
Yes.
because the brain is like, oh, there's something here,
Mhm.
right? So it's a lot more. So the ways we have of dealing with these kinds of intrusive thoughts,
Yes.
it can make it
Yes.
worse. So part of the idea is to actually have a different way of seeing that.
Mm.
So you acknowledge the
Mhm.
thought, you accept that, yeah, you know what? Yeah, my brain always gives me that kind of thought.
Mhm.
And, but what I'm going to do now, I'm going to lock in
Yeah.
to the smallest aspect of what I have to do next.
Mhm.
So, for example, let's with badminton,
Yes.
I'll lock in to where I'm going to put my feet,
Mhm.
have my racket, where I have and where I want to drop, where I want that bird to drop. I have to, so I'm
Mhm.
focusing on the smaller, minute pieces, and then your brain
Mm.
is locks in when you do that. Versus like I'm going to focus
Mhm.
on badminton, that doesn't give your brain enough. You need to tell it more
Yes.
specifically. I'm going to focus on
Mhm.
everything I've learned and make sure I have my right
Mhm.
positioning because
Yes.
more likely to make me win that game than trying to
Yeah.
play this secondary game inside of my brain. One
Yes.
quick thing that you might find amusing is
Mhm.
that I sometimes it helps to name your brain. We'll give it a
Oh.
yeah, like my brain's name is Harry.
Oh, Harry. I love that.
So I would say, oh Harry, thanks for that. Yeah,
oh,
thanks for that thought. It's like
yes.
yeah, you're always full of those things, right? Sure.
Mhm.
By doing that, you create some distance between your will and
Yes. Yes.
it's not that
Mhm.
I don't want that thought. It's not my will.
Yes.
It's another will. It's Harry's giving
Mhm.
me that thought. And it helps to
Yes.
create a little bit of separation so that you're not so invested in
Yes.
your thoughts. I have a
Yes.
poster there. It says, don't believe everything you think. And it's a good one because
yes.
sometimes we just have thoughts and the thoughts are sometimes
Yeah.
absurd, but
Yes.
they can get stuck in our heads,
Yes.
especially the ones
Absolutely.
that has more emotions associated with it. You know,
Yes.
again, it's a normal part of the human functioning, but
Yes.
it can go badly sometimes.
Absolutely. I love that you broke that down, right? So you want to create some distance between the thought and especially those intrusive thoughts, and then you want to focus on something manageable, something that the brain can actually focus on, and then you
Yeah,
do that thing. Yes.
yeah. Like when I see my patients in the office
Mhm.
here, I would
Mhm.
I would give them a picture and tell them to just look at the picture and then
Mhm.
look away, and then I'll say, next time when you look at the picture, I want you to just focus on how the whites in the picture was used and how the artist used whites only, just only that. And then they start
Mm-hmm.
looking through. They start noticing,
Yes.
or only for the geometric shapes. And then
Mm-hmm.
because it locks your brain in, and your brain starts
Yes.
really engaging. And so
Yes.
this is the way sometimes to basically deal with intrusive thoughts.
Yes.
Even very commonly now, people spend a lot of time doing mindful activities, and
Mm-hmm.
so if you can like focus on your next breath,
Yes.
that could be useful. Notice what's
Yes.
happening with your lungs. Notice how it's expanding. You know,
Mm-hmm.
let's push the field to push it out, and
Yes.
you sort of get locked back into that one
Mm.
simple thing.
Yes.
And those activities can really help you change your relationship with your brain over time. And over
Mm-hmm.
time, the intrusive thoughts become less problematic.
Mm-hmm.
You're still going to have them, but they're not going to have as much emotions associated with them.
Yes.
You know,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. Like the last analogy I would use is it's like if you go into, let's say, the checkout of the grocery store, I
Mm-hmm.
see, like, I don't know, maybe World News or one of those tabloids, and it says, turn to page 6. You see
Mm-hmm.
a child between, I don't know, a Loch Ness monster and Bigfoot, right?
Yeah.
You could go like, oh my God, or you could go like, oh, what do they think of me? You see that
Yes.
lounge, you're like, yeah, well, you just got to be nonchalant about it. Like, yeah, you know what? Yeah, that's absurd,
Yeah.
right? Because that's how you want. That's a relationship you want to have with your brain. So that
Yes.
sometimes it gives you good stuff, but sometimes it just does weird stuff.
That is so true. And I'm so glad that you brought up this, even the functioning of the brain, because I don't think that as a whole, like, we don't realize how powerful our brain really is. It is a tool, it is a machine, right? And what I love about it too is that, we can change those neural pathways. Like,
Yeah,
it is very malleable. We can create better habits. It's Even if we're thinking something and it's hard to break, it doesn't mean that it's impossible to rearrange those neural pathways. And so,
that's right. But we have to accept that this is what we got, you know,
yes, that's right.
and make adjustments to it.
Exactly.
We have to make adjustments to it because you could curse your brain and people's like, oh my God, they get mad with their brain because, I
Yes.
have so many thoughts that come so fast. And yeah,
Yes.
like, yeah, that's kind of how it is.
Yes, right. Our
Yeah.
brains may function differently, but it's still doing its thing.
It's still doing its thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is part of the reason why, you know, unhappiness is going to come from time to time. It's normal,
Yes.
and
Mm,
and of course we didn't talk about deeper things, but we did. Like we talked about the death of a child. Like there's hardly
yes.
anything deeper than that. But,
Yeah.
but sometimes it's a similar process to kind of get,
Mm,
to how do you live with really difficult things, eh,
yeah.
you know, rather than getting stuck with resentment, which
Mm.
which is that's how people get stuck.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Dr. Shiroy, when we think about rethinking strength, survival, and support in our communities, what last thoughts would you like to leave with our Love Bay community, especially as it involves these things?
Yeah, yeah. I think embracing
Mm,
embracing the fact that that life can be really tough, and
yeah.
that we all have histories that we can't fix, that we can't get rid of,
Yes.
and that we're gonna have even memories and hurt feelings that we can have, but
Mm,
we want to develop an ability to to allow some of that to occur. It's
mm-hmm.
not a disaster. It's okay, and allow it to kind of leave too.
Mm,
Don't grasp it too tightly.
yes.
Let it flow through your hands a little bit, and
Yeah.
so that you can move on. with your life. Moving on with your life, it's not you're not doing it for the other person who hurt you. You're
Yeah.
actually doing it for yourself. Because
Yes.
when you hold on to the resentment, guess who's carrying the burden? It's you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So powerful. So powerful. As we come to the end of tonight's Insight Hour on the Mental Health Hour, I want to extend my sincere thanks to Dr. Sharoy for joining us and for helping us unpack such an important question. Who gets to be resilient? Tonight's conversation reminds us that resilience is not simply about enduring hardship because life happens to all of us. True resilience is not about how much pain we can carry on our own. It is about having access to the relationships, resources, and support systems that make healing possible. And sometimes what we call resilience is actually survival. And while there is strength in surviving, we must also ask why some individuals and communities are consistently expected to carry more with less support and still be celebrated for pushing through. Thank you to everyone who joined us tonight, who shared in our live stream or listened quietly and reflected. Your presence matters, and these conversations matter. And before we close, I want to invite you to join us next week for another powerful episode of Real Talk on the Mental Health Hour. Our topic is carrying more than a baby, the mental health of Black motherhood. Joining me will be our incredible Real Talk panelists, Shanique Edwards, Charlene Lex, Roxanne Francis, and Natasha Pennycook, as we engage in an honest and heartfelt conversation about the realities of Black motherhood. Together, we'll explore the emotional load Black mothers often carry, the impact of systemic inequities in healthcare, the pressure to appear strong, and the importance of creating spaces where Black women feel seen, heard, and supported. This will be a powerful conversation about motherhood, mental health, advocacy, and community. You don't want to miss it. If tonight's discussion resonated with you and you're seeking support for yourself, your relationships, or your family, you are always welcome to connect with us. I'm your host, Felicia Fishoff. Thank you again for spending your evening with us on the Mental Health Hour on Love Bay Afrobeat Music and Talk Radio. Until next time, take care of your mind, your body, and your heart. Peace out.